Hi Kate, so thanks for coming in today.
You're welcome, thanks for having me.
It's okay. Yeah, so what did you want to be when you were growing up?
When I was a kid, I wanted to be all sorts of ridiculous things. Queen of England was pretty high on the list.
Sounds like me.
As was astronaut. But when I really started thinking about it when I was in high school, I thought that I wanted to be a journalist.
So why did you choose the publishing industry as like a communicative medium?
It came down to newspapers and something else written and printed, maybe magazines, maybe books, I didn't quite know what. But when I really decided on book publishing as what I wanted to do, what appealed to me was the extra lead time you get. So instead of working on an article that needs to go to print that night to be in the newspaper the next day, you know, I start working on a book 6 months before it comes out.
Yeah.
And that extra time to really be able to work on crafting the words and making them as good as they can be.
So what are some of the highlights or lowlights of your job, like as an editor?
There are millions of both. The highlights are obviously that I get to make books as my job.
Yeah.
Which are things that I love and that I've always loved. So the fact that I can go home at the end of a day's work with a brand new book that wouldn't exist without my input in it is really nice.
The lowlights are, it's very stressful at times because you are really the last line of defense between a person's life's work and it going out into the world. So it's a lot of responsibility.
So you were talking before about being the author and then it comes to you. So is that the only type of interaction that you have with the authors? Or?
Sometimes as an editor, you might have to give someone some bad news.
Yeah.
Or you might have to point out some flaws in that manuscript that they've been working on for 10 years of their life. So you really need to be able to pick people quite quickly and choose a plan of attack in how am I going to say this thing that I need to say so it's going to be received well, so it's going to happen quickly, so the author doesn't lose faith in me.
Is that the same with your interaction with like the wider audience?
As an editor, I don't have that much interaction with the wider audience. There's a not very nice saying that goes, you only ever notice an editor's work when they've done a bad job.
And it's true in a sense. You like to think of a book as being a piece of communication from the author's mind straight into your hands.
Yeah.
So I don't want to be prominent in the work.
Yeah.
I don't want it to be obvious what I've done. But at the same time, I do play a big role in that finished product that people are reading, and even though they might never know it, I always feel proud remembering what something looked like when it first landed on my desk.
What was the hardest book to publish?
A personal finance book. So how to pay off your credit cards, how to save for a house, that kind of thing. The author was a very nice person, but basically when I started working on her book, it was clear to me that she copied about 75% of it from the internet.
Okay.
Google and Wikipedia, copy and paste.
That was difficult to, firstly to make the author realise why that was a problem. She, I guess, hadn't studied things like intellectual property and copyright at school, so she just didn't seem to realise that copying her book off the internet wasn't okay.
Yeah.
And I tried to appeal to her as a personal finance expert. I tried to appeal to her in financial terms and say, if people can get most of this book for free on the internet, why would they pay $30 to get it from you in a book?
Yeah.
I have to say, I eventually ended up rewriting most of that book so it wasn't plagiarised from the internet.
So as a professional communicator, have you had any books or experiences that have conflicted with your views or morals or values? Or?
I work with a prominent Christian author. I'm an atheist myself and occasionally have to edit chapters on why abortions are bad, which is something I don't personally agree with.
Yeah.
So it's a test of my ability to do my job, which, it's not my job to argue with the author about the ethics of what he's saying. My job is to help him say what he's saying in the best way possible.
Is there anything that we haven't touched on that you'd like to add?
The only thing I would say is that it took me a really long time to realise that there were people who get to make books as their job and work on books every day. But there are people who do it every day. So if it's something that appeals to you, and you think it's an industry you'd like to work in, do your research, learn about how it works, learn about the different kinds of jobs you can do within publishing.
Well, thank you so much for coming in today.
You're welcome.